Lucinda had always been known for her impeccable skills as a hairdresser. Her salon, nestled in the heart of the bustling city, attracted clients from all walks of life. Whether it was an elaborate wedding hairstyle or a simple trim, Lucinda's talents shone through every strand of hair she touched. But as the sun set each night, and the bustling energy of the day faded, something strange happened. Lucinda would lock up her salon, only to hear a soft whisper drifting through the still air. At first, she brushed it off, assuming it was the wind or her mind playing tricks on her. However, the whispers persisted, growing clearer with each passing night. They spoke not in coherent sentences but in fragmented words, leaving Lucinda intrigued and a little unsettled. One evening, after finishing a long day of styling, Lucinda noticed something odd in her salon. The old pot that had been in her family for generations seemed to have shifted slightly. It was a plain, unassuming piece that she kept on a high shelf more for sentiments than decor. Her mother had passed it down to her, and before that, it had belonged to her grandmother. Lucinda had never thought much of it until now. As she examined it more closely, she felt a chill run down her spine. The pot had a strange, almost otherworldly glow to it, as if it were alive. That night, when the whispers returned, they seemed to be coming from the direction of the pot. The following morning, Lucinda couldn't shake the eerie feeling. She was successful, more successful than she had ever dreamed, but something was gnawing at her. The whispers, the pot, and the strange connection between them were beginning to consume her thoughts. Could this pot be the key to understanding the mysterious voice? She had no idea, but one thing was certain: she would have to confront whatever was haunting her if she wanted peace of mind. Lucinda tried to ignore the whispers that had become a nightly occurrence. Business was booming, and her name was on everyone's lips. Customers praised her for her flawless techniques, and her waiting list stretched months ahead. Her newfound success should have been a source of joy, yet Lucinda found herself growing more anxious with each passing day. Despite the growing accolades, she couldn't rid herself of the gnawing feeling that something was terribly wrong. The strange whispers always came when she was alone, when the hustle and bustle of the salon died down, and the street outside grew quiet. One night, as Lucinda was closing up, she decided to examine the old pot once more. It sat there, innocuous and plain, but she couldn't shake the feeling that it held some dark secret. She lifted it carefully, turning it over in her hands. There was nothing visibly unusual about it. No markings, no strange symbols, just an old pot that had been passed down through generations. But as she stared at it, she felt a strange pull, as if the pot itself were trying to communicate with her. Setting it down, Lucinda sighed, her frustration mounting. Was she imagining things? Or was there something more to this family heirloom? That night, the whisper returned, but this time, it wasn't fragmented. It was clear, almost conversational. "It's time," the voice said. Lucinda froze in her bed, her heart racing. Time for what? She couldn't bring herself to respond, but she knew the voice was right. Something was coming, something inevitable. As she lay awake in the darkness, Lucinda made a silent promise to herself. She would confront whatever was haunting her, no matter what it took. She couldn't go on living in fear, not with so much at stake. Lucinda had always been a woman of action. If something troubled her, she faced it head-on. But the whispers that plagued her nights were unlike any challenge she had faced before. They were intangible, elusive, and they crept into the quiet corners of her mind, making her doubt her own sanity. Still, Lucinda was not one to back down. Determined to get to the bottom of the mystery, she decided to spend an evening in her salon after hours. She needed to know if the whispers were tied to the building, the pot, or something else entirely. As the clock struck midnight, Lucinda sat in the dimly lit salon, waiting. She had turned off all the lights except for a single lamp near the old pot. The quiet was deafening, every creak and groan of the building amplified in the stillness. Hours passed, and just as she was about to give up, it happened. The air in the salon shifted, growing colder. The faint sound of a whisper began to fill the room, but this time, Lucinda wasn't afraid. She was ready. "Show yourself," she whispered back, her voice steady. The whisper grew louder, and suddenly, a figure began to materialize in front of her. It was faint at first, like smoke swirling in the air, but soon, it took on a more defined shape. A woman, dressed in old-fashioned clothes, stood before her. Her eyes were sad, her face pale and ethereal. Lucinda stared in shock, unable to move. The ghost spoke, her voice soft and filled with sorrow. "I am bound to this place, to that which was taken from me," she said, her gaze shifting to the old pot. Lucinda's heart pounded in her chest as she realized the truth. The ghost, the whispers, her success, they were all connected to the pot. But why? And what had been taken from this spirit? The answers were still shrouded in mystery, but Lucinda knew one thing: she had opened a door that could never be, the curse unveiled. Lucinda sat frozen in her chair, her eyes fixed on the ghostly figure before her. The ghost, with her ethereal presence, radiated an otherworldly sadness that tugged at Lucinda's heart. "What do you mean?" Lucinda asked, her voice barely a whisper. "What was taken from you?" The ghost's eyes, deep with sorrow, flickered as she gestured toward the old pot. "This pot is not just an heirloom," the ghost began. "It holds more than the memories of your ancestors. It holds a curse, one that has been passed down through generations in your family." Lucinda's mind raced. A curse. That seemed impossible. But the ghost continued before she could gather her thoughts. "Long ago, your great-great-grandmother was given this pot as a gift, but she did not know it was stolen. It belonged to a woman, a powerful healer, who was wronged by her village. They took everything from her, including this pot, which she had used in her rituals. As a final act of vengeance, she cursed the pot and all who possessed it. While it grants fortune and success to its owners, it demands a heavy price. I, too, was a victim of this curse." Lucinda felt a chill creep over her. Her recent success, the whispers, the ghost, everything was beginning to make sense. What did you lose?" Lucinda asked, her voice shaky. The ghost's expression grew pained as she spoke. "I lost my life," she said softly. "And if you do not break the curse, you will lose something dear to you as well." The weight of the ghost's words sank in, and Lucinda knew she couldn't ignore the warning. But how could she possibly break a curse that had spanned generations? The next morning, Lucinda couldn't shake the ghost warning from her mind. Her once bustling salon now felt eerie and cold. As she styled her client's hair, her hands moved on autopilot while her mind churned with questions. How was she supposed to break this curse? And what would she have to sacrifice in return? After the last client left, Lucinda hurriedly closed the salon and rushed to her grandmother's house. Her grandmother, Agnes, was the only person who might have some answers. Though old, Agnes had a sharp memory and knew the family's history better than anyone. As Lucinda explained the situation to her, Agnes listened intently, her face growing more and more grave. When Lucinda finished, her grandmother nodded slowly. "I always wondered if it would come to this," Agnes said softly, her eyes clouding with memories. Lucinda leaned forward, desperate for answers. "Grandma, what do you know? How do I break the curse?" Agnes sighed deeply. "The curse is ancient, and it can only be broken through sacrifice. You must return the pot to the rightful place, the resting grounds of the healer who cast it. But that won't be enough. To break the curse, you must give up something of great value, something tied to your success. Otherwise, the curse will continue, and the ghost will never be free." Lucinda felt her stomach drop. Something of great value. Like what? Agnes looked at her granddaughter with sadness. "You must give up the salon, Lucinda. It is the source of your fortune, and the curse is tied to it. If you want to break the curse and free the spirit, you must leave it behind." Lucinda's heart pounded in her chest. Could she really give up everything she had worked for? The thought seemed impossible. But deep down, Lucinda knew she had no choice. The curse had to be broken. Lucinda returned to her salon with a heavy heart. Agnes had given her the location of the healer's resting place, a remote village several hours away. It would take days to journey there and complete the ritual, but Lucinda knew that was the easy part. The hard part would be giving up the salon, her life's work, her passion. The very thought of walking away from the place that had brought her so much joy and success filled her with dread. But the weight of the curse hung over her, and Lucinda knew that without sacrifice, her fortune would turn to misfortune. For days, Lucinda debated her next move. Each night, the ghost returned, urging her to hurry. "Time is running out," the ghost whispered, her voice soft but insistent. The curse grew stronger each day. Lucinda couldn't ignore the signs her once thriving salon was beginning to lose its luster. Clients were canceling appointments, her best stylists were leaving, and strange accidents were happening more frequently. The curse was tightening its grip, and Lucinda knew she had to act quickly. Finally, Lucinda made the difficult decision. She would close the salon. It was the only way to break the curse and free the spirit. With a heavy heart, she informed her staff and clients that she would be shutting down indefinitely. Though they were shocked and saddened, Lucinda explained that it was for personal reasons, a choice she had to make. As she locked the doors for the final time, Lucinda felt a strange mixture of sadness and relief. The salon was her dream, but it was also her curse. Now, she had to face the final test. The day had come. Lucinda packed a small bag, including the old pot, and set out for the village where the healer had lived. The drive was long and uneventful, giving Lucinda too much time to think. She wondered if she was making the right decision. Could she really leave behind everything she had built? What if breaking the curse didn't free the ghost? What if there were more secrets she hadn't uncovered yet? As she approached the remote village, doubt gnawed at her, but she pushed it aside. She had come too far to turn back now. The village was small and quiet, seemingly untouched by time. Lucinda asked around until she found an elderly woman who remembered the stories of the healer. "Oh, yes," the woman said. "Her resting place is deep in the woods. Few dare to go there, but if you seek peace, you must find it." Lucinda thanked the woman and set off into the dense forest, clutching the pot tightly. The air grew colder as she ventured deeper, and an unsettling silence surrounded her. Finally, after what felt like hours, Lucinda came upon a small clearing. In the center stood a modest grave marked by a simple stone. This, she knew, was the healer's final resting place. Lucinda knelt before the grave, placing the pot gently on the ground. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I didn't know. But I'm here to make it right." As Lucinda knelt before the healer's grave, the wind began to stir around her, rustling the leaves in a soft, eerie symphony. The pot sat in front of the gravestone, looking just as plain and unassuming as ever. But Lucinda knew that within it lay the source of a curse that had spanned generations. Taking a deep breath, she reached into her bag and pulled out the small collection of herbs and oils her grandmother had given her for the ritual. She sprinkled the herbs over the grave, her hands trembling slightly as she walked. The ghostly figure appeared once more, standing at the edge of the clearing. This time, her presence was different, less sorrowful, more peaceful. "You have come," the ghost said, her voice barely audible over the wind. "You have done what needed to be done." Lucinda nodded, unable to speak. The air around her grew colder, and the trees seemed to sway in response to the energy that filled the clearing. "Place your hand on the pot," the ghost instructed, "and speak the words of release." Lucinda hesitated for a moment, then placed her hand on the cold surface of the pot. Her mind flashed with memories of the salon, of her clients, of the success she had built. She had worked so hard for all of it, and now she was letting it go. But as she spoke the words her grandmother had taught her, Lucinda felt a strange sense of calm wash over her. "I release you," she whispered. "I release you and all that you have held." The wind howled, and for a brief moment, everything seemed to stop. The ghost, her form flickering like a dying candle, smiled softly. "Thank you," she whispered. "The curse is broken." With that, she faded into the air, leaving Lucinda alone in the clearing. It was over. The curse had been lifted, and Lucinda felt an overwhelming sense of relief. But as she stood up and turned to leave, she realized something: though the curse was gone, her life would never be the same.